Welcome, everybody, and welcome to the Sales Experts channel. I'm Steve Rosen, and I'll be your host today of what we hope is a highly interactive fireside chat. Now, when I say fireside chat, I mean no slides except this one you see here, no death by PowerPoint, just point-counterpoint discussions and insights on the biggest challenges you face as sales managers. Our goal here is not to sell you anything. There'll be no pitch at the end. Really what we want to do is to provide you with some great sales management gems, pearls, and insights. Welcome to the biggest challenges that sales managers face. And from the home office in St. Louis, I want to welcome and thank my esteemed colleague, friend, and co-presenter Mike Weinberg for joining me on this special presentation. He is the handsome one you see with the glasses. Okay, well, maybe we're both handsome. And Mike's a great guy and an accomplished author. He's the author of two, not just one, two Amazon #1 bestsellers. His first book, New Sales Simplified, The Essential Handbook for Prospecting and New Business Development, has been a bestseller for over 4 years now, and it's a fantastic read. And it's been recognized by HubSpot as the #3 most highly read sales book of all time. That's an incredible accomplishment, Mike. And he didn't stop there. His second book, this is his latest book, but his second one, I'm sure there's another one coming, Sales Management Simplified, is being called arguably the best book that's ever been written on sales management, an unequal blueprint for leading salespeople and building high-performance sales teams. As far as I know, I've read both books, and all I can say is Mike's a great guy. I love his storytelling style, his sense of humor. We both have had battle scars from playing fantasy football, and we also share a passion for sales management. So I just want to do a few housekeeping notes. First of all, welcome, Mike.
Steve, first of all, that was overly gracious. Second of all, I love the fact that you've got a fireside, little fire burning there in the background, because I'm in the Midwest, unlike you, north of the border. Here in the Midwest, U.S., it is hot and humid. So the thought of a nice, cool winter day and a fireplace is kind of refreshing, actually, right now. So a joy to be with you. I've looked up to you for a long time on sales management issues, so it'll be fun to chat with you.
Likewise, and I think we share similar views, but hopefully there'll be some fun differences. I just want to make a few housekeeping notes, and the first one is for those folks. You'll find the presentation. There's 2 downloads, one on the Sales Expert channel, which is a PDF which talks about the channel, and also a link to the Sales Expert channel on LinkedIn if you'd like to join the group. I'll be sending out the contact information for Mike and myself post-webinar, as we didn't want to overburden you with anything. Make sure you can identify the chat box where you can ask any questions of Mike and myself. We'll stop periodically and open it up for questions. I'll monitor that. And for the best questions, as we promised, we'll be giving away free books. Okay, so let's kick it off. Let's just get into it. As they say, no holds barred. Mike, I know you're going to come out of your shell and speak your mind on these issues, but a lot of these things we see, sales managers are continually making bad hires, and it's frustrating, it's costly. Can you share your insights as to what you think they can do better to improve their hiring ratios or their success ratios in hiring?
Yeah, way to jump into the deep end right away, Steve. Nothing like
feet to the fire, baby.
Nothing like an easy one to start. We can go a lot of directions with bad hires. One of our key responsibilities as managers is to build a team. And one of my great frustrations, in fact, it's such a big frustration, it's why I have an entire chapter in the first book, in the first part of Sales Management Simplified, talking about a one-size-fits-all view of sales talent management. And Steve, I don't know what you're seeing, but I see a lot of companies where the same person, there's one role for everybody. Let me say it like that. There's one role for everybody, and regardless of the DNA and the makeup of the person, everyone in sales does everything. So what I see is a lot of people that have been in sales for a long time who do okay when business comes their way because they're good account babysitters, or they are good nurturers, or they're really good with product or technical stuff. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? They do fine when there's business coming their way, but they never, ever want to go out and try to find new business. And if you look at the cause of so much failure today, I think in a lot of places, it's because we have people that I call zookeepers. A lot of people will call them farmers. I call them zookeepers because I think it's more descriptive. But they have people wired like that in positions that require hunting. And that doesn't go well. So I'll just pause there and we can kind of go back and forth if you want. But I think we hire the wrong people sometimes because we don't have clarity of the role and who we want in the job.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say exactly that before you start hiring, it really does require understanding and learning. It's a learning process. Hiring is a process, and if you do the process well and systematically, you'll improve your outcomes. But part of it is learning what works and what doesn't work. What I see a lot of, which drives me absolutely crazy, is managers hiring what I call the plug and play. And I talk to the plug and play as someone who has industry experience, they know the products, they know the customers, but guess what? They also carry the baggage, or the baggage as they say in English, of years of sales and don't have the right attitude. And for the manager, it's very easy to hire a plug and play because they can put them in, they can get going quickly, it makes their life easy. But 6 months later, you're kind of looking and thinking, oh my God, I wish I hired that young buck who's going to go out there and make it happen. So
Oh, Steve, I told that exact story in the book, and I just had a conversation last week with a handful of managers because it's so common, and it's even worse, or even I like to say it's worser when you go out and hire someone you think is the stud from the industry, the 30-year veteran, you got him from your competitor. But the thing a lot of times management forgets is that person isn't hungry anymore, and they may be the number one person at your competitor because they've been fed all the cherry accounts and they've been there so long that they're just managing this large book of business or this large territory. But they forgot what it's like to go out and find business, and they don't have the hunger or the desire to go do it. And then you bring them in your company, you pay them a fortune, and they sit there. And you're like, this isn't exactly what I signed up for when I paid out all this money to bring in a star,
You got it.
It's awful.
And they don't always bring their book over with them, right? So for me, very simple, because I look at simple tips, and I think your approach is how to simplify things. It's higher attitude. I'll have someone fall short on all the experience, but get me someone who's hungry and will knock down doors.
Hunger's big. Yeah. You know what? I'll add one more thought, and then if you want, we can go to the next thing. But I think we should do a better job defining what's required in the role. I think if management would sit down and actually write up a legitimate job description, not the kind of flowery thing that ends up in an ad that's awful. And in fact, I'm an advocate. I tell my clients, when you're putting out an ad or a job description, be brutally honest. If the job requires prospecting, say it. If it requires all kinds of grunt work and territory management and account maintenance, say it. Like, describe the ugly parts of the job as well as the good parts, so you attract people that like that stuff. I had helped a client hire someone recently, and I put in big bold letters: do not apply for this job if you don't think the telephone is an effective methodology for securing appointments with prospects. Because I don't want those people to apply, right?
Well, I mean, that's great. I think that's a great tip to, because you're wasting time with people who are not going to be stars on your team.
Awesome. All right, let me pivot back to you. I got a question. You know this because I talk about it all the time. I'm a huge fan of field work and managers getting out in the field, not to do their people's jobs, but to watch, observe, coach, give feedback, and play the management role on sales calls, et cetera. And I don't see them doing it enough. So I'm curious for you, why are managers not spending, from your perspective, why are they not spending time to coach and improve rep skills, and then they're not documenting what happens when they go out in the field and they say things like it's too time consuming. So why don't you tackle that one?
Well, coaching, as I've been beating the drum on coaching, is the number one activity that sales managers do that drive performance. It's a revenue generating activity. If when they're out there, not they're closing the sale, but they're helping their people get better, right? So you're moving your B's to B pluses, your B pluses to A minuses. So the challenge that many managers face, and it's not just one factor. But one of the factors is a lot of them are poor coaches, so the activity's not fun. Which coaching can be a lot of fun if you get good at it. The other one is they're bogged down with tons of administration, and they tend to do the administration first, and coaching tends to fall down. If you think of Stephen Covey and the Big Rocks, well, I'll get to that later. And that's really unfortunate, because if you want to make your bonus, the key is getting out and helping your people make their bonus and getting them to be better each time. This whole thing about documenting, I'm a firm believer that when you put pen to paper, it actually has an impact. Documenting, it could be a one-pager. I'm not saying write, a great novel, like Love and War or Peace and War, or a great novel like Sales Management Simplified. But writing writing down some notes and having some next steps is really critical. So again, like hiring, coaching is a process, and we all tend to cut a lot of corners on the process. I mean, that's my perspective. I can go on and on about this.
All right, let me ask you a couple. Let me ask you a couple specific questions, because I'm going to ask you a hard one first, because this is what I hear from a lot of managers. I don't have time to get out and work with my people because the company is burying me in all this administrative crap, and I'm getting dragged to 6 other meetings a week. So how do I have time to get in the field? And then there's no way I have time to document. What's your response to that?
Okay. Well, then, I used to have, when I first went on as VP of sales of a company, and I had an analyst, and the answer when I asked for certain sales reports is, can't do that. And shortly after, they no longer worked for me. Now, not to say that I'm a hard ass, but some of it is systemic within the organization where they are having too many meetings. But again, if your sales managers are valuable assets within your organization, at the end of the day, if sales are not there, there's no excuse that you were in 5 or 10 meetings. So there has to be pushback from the sales manager saying, hey, I want to get out and coach. This is the most important thing I have to do. So again, it's about priorities. And if you look and we work with teams and say, okay, what's the biggest area you can impact your business? Well, if it's coaching, then book your coaching time. Book it in advance, book it a month out, 2 months out, and then basically when people invite you to meetings, say, sorry, I'm out coaching.
I am with you.
The easy thing is just to drop the coaching.
I am with you. The way I say that to managers is, this is not optional. This is your job. You don't get to this after you get all the other crap done. This is more important. This is how you move the needle. This is how you develop skills, and we'll circle to accountability in a second. Let me ask you one more question about field work. I was with a company for about a week and a half, running through a series of workshops just last week and the week before, and their sales managers are running out in the field, but they're doing what I call they're playing hero. Like they're going out. And it's because their people aren't strong enough. So they're going on all the big pitches. They're going to close the deals. And I was trying to get across that they're actually killing their team by doing this. I would just love to hear your take on that for a minute, because there's a big difference between going out and playing hero and making heroes where you're investing in your people and coaching, as you say.
Okay. Well, I mean, Mike, you ask great questions, and I love your insights. I talked to the top 10 sales management mistakes. And one of them is being Superman.
I love it.
And if and this happens a lot of times when you have a great sales rep, you move into a sales management role, and they go out there and they close the deals. And they're doing great, except at the end of the day, when they start doing that for 8 or 9 or 10 reps, they're exhausted. And, the whole adage is about not helping, not fishing for someone, but teaching them how to fish. So, coaching is a difficult skill, so it's much easier, right? And I'm sure you find this. It's much easier to tell the person what to do or to do it for them than to teach them how to do it. But the top sales managers are the ones who understand that if they, if they want to grow their business, they got to grow their people. And growing their people doesn't mean doing the job for them.
Would
you agree?
Yeah, I love how we're aligned. I call them heroes and you call them Superman. I think we're making the same point. It's not scalable. 100%. It's not scalable. You can't live like that. Yeah,
and it's not fun for the salespeople either.
Yeah,
right? They don't have a good sense of accomplishment. Motivation is when I close a deal. If you threw me over a deal, I said, okay, it's nice, thank you, but I want to be the one who closes that deal. If my manager's doing it for me, I start to get disengaged.
Yeah, that's really good.
So, I mean, great conversation. Now, are you finding sales managers? One of the key parts of coaching is holding people accountable. And there probably is a balance between accountability and, coming across or feeling like you're a micromanager. And how do you sort of balance those two things?
Yeah, well, let me start by saying I love that you asked that question, because good management is not micromanagement. And there are so many sales managers that are fearful of being accused of micromanaging, or probably even more likely, we have salespeople that love to play the micromanagement card. So they're real quick to tell you, well, I don't do so well, when you're micromanaging me, right? So this is where, and I'll point folks to Chapter 20 in Sales Management Simplified, which is my chapter on the one-on-one meeting. And I love that you lead with coaching and how important coaching is, and I agree. The thing that I've been pushing really hard, that I've been leading with, is one-on-one accountability meetings, because what's making me nuts is that I see managers that I ask, well, how often do you meet with your people, one-on-one? And they say things like, well, I talk to everyone almost every day. I check in with them, and I'm like, no. I'm not asking how often you talk to them. How often do you meet to talk about results and the pipeline? And the reality is that they're not, and they don't. So one of the things I'm strongly recommend, and I take no credit for this. I stole this from my sales management mentor, Donnie Williams, who was my manager in the 90s and my business partner in the 2000s, and we're still friends. And in fact, I use him on several of my clients now. Donnie was a sales manager that really understood it was more about the heart than the head, and you had to have your heart engaged, and that nobody wanted to be asked about activity first. When you start asking about activity and show me your calendar and, let's go over activity metrics. And I'm a huge fan. I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm all about the math. Usually he who turns over more rocks gets more business. But the thing that Donnie created is something I now call the sales management accountability progression. And it's simply a formula that says when you meet one-on-one, and you should do this every month with every person, and you can do it in 15 minutes, you should cover these three things in this order: results, pipeline, and then activity. So if you start your accountability meetings by looking at the sales report and looking at results against goal, there's a minute of your meeting right there, and you're making the salesperson answer for their performance. The second part of the equation is going over the pipeline, because that's our future business. The results are historical looking. The pipeline's future looking. That's the lifeblood of the business. In fact, one of our mutual friends, Jeb Blunt, says this all the time. He says, the pipe is life. So when after I look at results, I look at the pipeline. Is there enough in here? What did you add in the last month? What did you advance? As I look at this in total, is there enough in here at the right stage to help you make your numbers next month, next quarter? And the thing is, if the pipeline is super healthy and growing and full, then I don't really dig too much on activity. And that's what keeps you away from, the micromanagement conversation. But, and this is my last point here, Steve, but the big however is, if the pipeline's weak, then you have no choice as the manager but to dive deep into activity. Show me call reports. Let me see your calendar. Pull out your strategic target list. Who'd you meet with last month? Who you got scheduled this month? Where are you spending your time? And I will say this, that the manager who does it in that order, results, then pipeline, then activity, cannot be accused of micromanagement. And any rep who does is a fool. And then they give you this crap, well, I don't do so well when you're micromanaging me. I don't like this. Well, then fix your results and fill your pipeline, and I'll stop asking you about how you're spending your time. But until then, I have no choice. And I think that's how we avoid micromanagement.
Again, similar thinking. I think a couple of points, and I'm just saying maybe the same thing but slightly differently, is one of the ways if you're micromanaging is you're digging up the seed every day to see why it's not growing, and that's what it feels like. My belief is setting a couple things. One, if you have regular meetings and you understand the purpose and the expectations for that meeting, then I don't think it's about micromanaging, because I'm not going to spend every minute with you managing every component, but I am going to set periodic points, whether it's once a week, once every 2 weeks. I talk about quarterly business reviews. So a couple things. One is clear expectations. So follow the same format. You're not trying to catch anybody. You're trying to say, hey, this is what I need to know, and I want you to demonstrate that you're on top of your business. And if you are, I'm good. And not really, because the other end is if you don't do that, then there's no accountability and there's nothing that's important. So
I love that the way you're positioning this, Steve, is that it's not a gotcha meeting, and that's everyone needs to know that. This is a results focus. I want to help you. I want to help you take a good look at your results and look at your pipeline so I can get you focused. Most good reps appreciate this meeting, don't they?
Well, you know what? It's funny because what you're doing, you're saying, hey, I just want to make sure you're on top of your business. These are the three things that are critical to be on top of your business, and we're going to talk about them. I don't want to catch you. I want to help you get better at this. And for me, the accountability component, I look at also self-development and the coaching component follows the same route. So every time you meet with the rep, if you're coaching on a specific area of development, you're always leading with that. How did it go with closing? Tell me about your last 3 closes. What successes did you have? So that whole accountability is, hey, I'm just going to touch base with you to see how you're doing. So, Mike, we have a number of questions that have come in, and we've really asked for folks to ask questions. So I'm going to actually, there's several of them here, which is great. Thank you. Keep the questions coming in. Let's answer 2 of them.
Sure.
And then we'll go back and, or maybe we'll go through these. Okay. So this is a great question. I don't know who it's from, and maybe you guys want to write your names down when you put your question. I can find out later. And what if a company hires attitude, because we talked about attitude, but also the employees are not performing because they're not motivated? What are your thoughts on that? So you're hiring great people, but whatever, I guess they're blaming the company, but then also the employees are not performing because they're not motivated. Okay, so you're getting attitude people, but we're not motivating them. Thoughts, Mike?
Well, I'll address this from a different angle. I appreciate the question from whomever asked that. What I'll say is this: sales culture is huge. You can't underestimate the power of sales culture, and I say this a lot. A miserable accountant can do great work. You can hate your job as an accountant and not have your heart engaged, and still produce on-time, accurate financial statements and great advice. But show me the salesperson who hates his or her job and they're doing well, and you're not going to find it, right? So a lot of the ways we disengage the heart of a salesperson is when we have an anti-sales culture, when we feel free to pick on salespeople in public, and we take their credit when things are good, and we place the blame when things are bad. I tell one story in the book about this particular CEO who literally at the end of a great quarter where they had record sales and profits, went around the company meeting and he thanked everybody, including the janitor and the engineers and the production people, didn't thank the salespeople because he hated them. God. He was anti-sales. So to answer the question of, if you have demotivated people, I think there's 2 places that you need to look first. One, what's the culture? Do we appreciate and respect and build up our sales force, or do we treat them like dirt? And then the second thing I think you need to look at, and frankly, this is about as obvious as it gets, but compensation and complacency start with the same 4 letters. So if you've got salespeople that are saying they're not motivated, they're complacent, they're not hungry, do you have a dumb comp plan? Are you paying people to babysit accounts that were sold years ago? That's possible, right? Is it possible they're on a commission plan that's like an annuity, and whether they get out of bed or not? And I have some clients, in the industrial space where they're servicing a territory with a lot of consumables, and whether that salesperson gets up out of bed or not, that territory is going to buy X amount of product, and they're going to get paid commission. So I'll stop there. I'm curious for your take on the motivation.
See, I come from a different perspective on this, because I look to, first of all, motivation, you can't motivate people, right? You want to hire self-motivated people. That would be my first response to that. What I do as an exercise with managers I work with, and even senior people, is, do you understand what drives each of your people? Because given you can't motivate them, I believe if you understand the why, you can at least tap into that. Because I'll come back and say, different from you, because it's not money. People are motivated by different things. So first of all, you want the self-motivated people, and as a great manager, it's not the external stuff. You've got to dig in and understand what drives the person to get out of bed every day. And if you can tap into that, and sometimes it could be about doing a great job, being recognized. So I kind of think, again, whoever wrote this question, I think it's a great question, but I also think look to yourself as a manager to tap into what motivates your people. Keep them engaged. So some of the responsibility, and I don't know what's causing the issue, but I look to the manager directly, and I also look, if you have people with the right attitude, they're self-motivated, so you just need to know what drives them.
Good.
Okay, let's do another question here. This is I like your response, and culture is critical, and certainly all the components around compensation, what you're asking people to do, expectations. So how do you prevent your best salespeople from working the system and taking too many liberties?
I think I don't mean to insult the person, but I think it's the wrong question.
Okay.
I'll throw out a quick answer. I won't give a long one here, and then I'd love to hear your take. We're judging results in sales, and unless someone is a cancer in the organization and creating all kinds of havoc for the salespeople and is full of negativity, I give a very large berth, lots of leeway to a top producer. I'll put up with prima donnas. I'll put up with playing a little loose with things I ask for, as long as it's not on integrity. Integrity is not negotiable. But I'm not into overly managing top producers. So I'm not as concerned about taking liberties. Unless you have a stupid comp plan that's paying someone to do nothing, then you need to address a comp plan. But I'm okay with top producers that don't toe the company line perfectly, because I'm not interested in good corporate citizens. I'm interested in sales assassins that can find and bring in business. As long as I'm talking high integrity, not cheating, not stealing, fully honest, but that push the envelope, because that's what I want in a seller. So what's your take on that?
Well, it's slightly different, but certainly I want challengers who are going to challenge management, who are going to push the envelope. But I also think, depending on the size of the corporation and the size of the sales force, there's two components that I look at in terms of success. And certainly one is results, but there's also a values and behaviors component, which I think as you get bigger becomes important, even if you're a top performer. And I would address issues with top performers who are not exhibiting the right values and behaviors, because I think it creates a short-term situation and other people pick up from it. So I'm more apt to address those liberties, again, if they're against the company's values.
That's good. Yeah, and it's interesting. I think if we look at our client bases too, you tend to work with larger companies where and the compliance. And I know you have a lot of pharma, so the compliance
100%.
Yeah. So in your world, I get it, and in my world, it tends to be more mid-sized organizations where there's a little more leeway. So we should probably clarify that. I'll put that caveat out there for my answer. So.
And that's a great insight, because it's true. I mean, if survival comes down to sales, then you're willing to put up with those top performers that that are going to do what it takes. Right. And I've seen organizations grow over time, right? Some of the pharma organizations were smaller, and that behavior was allowed to persist. And then as they become larger, people start to look at that a little more in depth. So size of the company, where they are in their life cycle, all factor into that area.
That's really good. I'll tell you what, let me pivot on this, Steve. You and I were talking about this earlier. We just were addressing how we handle top performers. Let's talk about underperformers. How come sales managers struggle when they handle underperformers? I've got a take or two, but I know you do, and I'd love to hear your think. How can managers do a better job dealing with those who are not getting it done, who are underperforming?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked it. That's a great question, and the part of I wrote an article that sales managers hate performance management, right? And part of it is I call it comfort with conflict, and if you perceive things as being conflicting, and you're not comfortable with conflict, then you're not going to feel comfortable addressing performance issues. And my belief is that a philosophy for sales managers. I don't know, Mike. Do your customers use the term PIP?
Yeah,
Performance Improvement Program. Okay, that's a known. What do you call it? A known PIP. So I talk about, when we go to PIPs, life is not good, right? Because we feel we're at the end of the rope, and it's either do or die. And my philosophy to performance management is everyone should be on a SIP. You know what a SIP is?
No, but I'm ready.
Okay. A SIP is a sales improvement program. So my belief is even your top reps should always be looking to improve. So you're always on this thing of, moving people to the next level, Even your top people, there's areas that they can move to the top level. So if you're always focused on improving performance, then part of your life is that then you're always going to be having those discussions. So if you're uncomfortable dealing with poor performers, I guess deviating a bit or just going off different directions, people don't break when you're honest with them. If you talk, if your intent is to help them and you have a discussion that things are not working or there's some areas for underperformance, the fact is the problem is not you, it's them. So you need to have the courage to have those discussions, is my short and simple answer. I'd love to hear your take on how that people can do a better job.
It's funny. I like to help sales managers deal with underperformance before it gets to the PIP level. So I love your take on that. I talk about talent management in a certain chapter in the book on this backside. I run through these 4 R's, and it's right people, right roles, retain your best, remediate or replace the underperformers, and then recruit. And I had the R thing going. Really, I would be saying coach up or coach out instead of remediate or replace. My theory is that underperformance doesn't go away or get better by hoping it will or by turning your back. And what I really like to encourage managers to do is if you've got someone who you've got a question mark on, go ahead and put them on a coach up plan. If they're a keeper, if you think they could be a keeper because of their character, their attitude, their desire to succeed, and they're just struggling, but the results aren't there, and you're doing these one-on-ones, and they're not getting the results, and the pipe's not getting filled the way you want it, but you think you want to invest in them before it gets to the PIP level where you got to deal with termination and HR stuff on your own, pre-HR, just sit them down and say, you know what, this isn't working right now. I want to help you. Like, this isn't acceptable. We got to get your performance where it needs to be. Let's make a plan. I want a plan in writing. Let's talk about who you're targeting. What's your strategy? I'm going to jump in and do more field work with you. I'm going to have Joe work with you a little bit too. Instead of doing accountability every 2 weeks, you and I are going to talk twice a week. I'm going to hop in the car with you. I'm going to, for a short period of time, maybe it's 30 days, maybe it's 60 days, I'm going to overinvest. And I think if you do that on the front end, you can catch underperformance in the bud instead of and just nip it. Because so many times I go into companies and they're like, "Hey, Mike, meet Johnny. Johnny's been here 2.5 years, and for the last 20 months he hasn't made his numbers. Can you coach him?" And I'm like, why didn't you deal with this 20 months ago?
Yeah.
You shouldn't. You can't let underperformance go unaddressed because it kills your culture and it kills your results. So that's my quick take: is coach up, put them on a coach up plan before you get to the PIP.
Okay, I call that the SIP. There you go.
Beautiful.
So maybe you can provide some insights here. Why do you think managers are afraid to have those discussions?
Oof. Well, I'm going to go 2 angles. One is that we got a lot of managers who were great salespeople because they were really relational, and they hate conflict, and so they're in a role, and they rather not deal with underperformance, and they'll let it get to the place where they need to fire someone rather than have a hard conversation because it just makes them uncomfortable. And frankly, that's wimpy, and it's management malpractice. I think the other reason that's probably more prevalent today, and I see this in a lot of companies right now, is I have managers telling me they don't want to coach up that person, or they don't want to lose that person because they don't want the hassle of filling the territory, and they don't want to deal with the extra workload that's going to come on them, and they don't have a good bench of potential candidates ready to hire. So they're scared. And I worked for a guy who was a brilliant consultant, a mentor to me, and he said sometimes, Mike, when you're dealing with problem talent, that no breath is better than bad breath. And that really struck me. And so instead of letting guys go on and on and on, and underperforming, just deal with it. Maybe it's better to have nobody than to have someone who's ruining your reputation and underperforming. And the one bit of coaching I'll give, Steve, is we have got to recruit ahead of the need. If you're responsible for fielding a lineup, if that's your job as a manager, and you have a couple people in your lineup that are automatic outs, and that you're going to have a problem, then you need to be looking for people now. And you should perpetually be looking for people and working your network and social networks and your customers to get a good bench of potential hires that you're working, because it's a lot easier to replace someone or add to your team when you already have candidates than when you're doing it in reactive mode because it's urgent.
Yeah, proactively recruiting. I'm with you. I think that's a great insight.
That's all right. Can I ask you? Can I change topics and ask you something else?
Sure.
This is a big one, especially before we start running short on time. I see sales managers living all the time carrying around the fire hose. Like, they jump in at every minute. They're looking for a problem to solve. They're looking for fires. They put themselves in between their people and the situation all the time, which is great. But I see these overwhelmed, running around like crazy, literally with their hair on fire, carrying a fire hose managers. How do we fix that? How do we keep the reps from calling us all the time, from wanting every answer, from you being the one everyone in the company goes to deal with a customer service product? How do managers do that?
Well, some of them fall into that trap, right? And they get a sense of identity that, hey, that's my job. I'm the firefighter. And folks who get calls all the time, I call them the operator, right? And it's not their role. We talked about that earlier on. That they're not there to close the deals. They're there to help their people get better. So if you're going to put out every fire, how are your people going to improve? So the first thing is resisting the temptation, and some of it's self-talk. When someone calls you, maybe you don't respond right away, right? Because reps are going to go where the easiest answer is, and if you make it easy on them, then hey, nobody wants to think, right? So I'll call my manager; he'll solve it for me, or she'll solve it for me. So what I've done with even managers that I coach is ask them, anytime you have a problem, call me with the solution, or a solution, or a couple solutions, and then we can talk about it. Because you want people thinking things through. You want them to, if the same issue comes up 2 weeks from now, you want them, even if you've helped them this time, that next time they can solve it themselves. And then you're helping them get better. You're helping them become, moving from a B to an A. But if you're always there, and I see managers, that's a lot of new managers, they want to really prove themselves and say, hey, I'm helping my people. But there's a difference between support and what I call codependency. Because some managers need that adrenaline that, hey, my reps are calling me all the time. Well, I think, you're not doing your job then. You're not coaching.
I hope everyone's listening. Steve has a ton of experience on this, and there's just a lot of wisdom there, Steve, on setting it up where you have them calling you with potential solutions, not just to every problem, because you can't do everybody's job for them. You never get to do your job. I see a lot of young new sales managers that think they're going to jump in and help everybody, and you can't because you have your own priorities. So I love it.
So, again, that's where I put that in the coaching bucket. So, I could probably ask you 20 more questions and have some good discussion. I'm just looking at time. I want to manage time, and there's people who've taken the time to ask some really good questions here. So I'm going to just default and see what the audience is asking and see if we can provide some. Here's one of your fans. Okay, so I'm going to just read this out. I haven't
one of all three. That's good. They must have gotten a check from me today.
Oh, it's your mother. Okay, sorry, or your kids. Okay, so I'm just going to read it. I haven't gone through it, but they said they're an avid fan of Mike Weinberg, so they must be a great question. Can you describe the ideal sales team meeting and what sales managers running the meeting needs to do, or framing the meeting? And it says Joe Hutchinson. Joe, thank you for the question. And he says, I'm an avid fan of Mike Weinberg, and P.S., I'm becoming an avid fan of Steve Rosen. No, he didn't say that.
He's good. He's waking up to Steve Rosen. That's good, and I guess I appreciate his inflated view of me. So moving along, sales team meetings are huge, and I think it's kind of a lost art. People want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And your team meeting is a place where you have a chance to put your fingerprints on the culture, create some competition, have some fun, and then these three things. This is my litmus test for a sales team meeting. Meetings are supposed to align, energize, and equip your sales team members. And most team meetings I see stink, and they're awful. They're not sales meetings, they're administrative meetings, or they're bitch sessions, or they're product delivery planning sessions, and everyone that's in sales is listening to this going, I know. I hate it. Managers, if your meetings are not energizing, aligning, and equipping your people, stop it. Stop the meeting until you get that figured out. We don't want our people leaving those meetings de-energized and no better equipped to go do their job. So that's the background. What I'd say is if you want to have better meetings, tackle real sales topics. And instead of managers doing all the work, dish the work out to the salespeople. Give them work to do.
Right
go
on.
Read Steve's book on sales management tips, or go read some blog posts.
But it's true. Ask, if you don't ask your people what they want to accomplish in a meeting or don't get them involved, then they sit back and they're bored.
Steve, that's brilliant.
And they're throwing daggers at you.
Especially ask your top people, what should we cover in a sales meeting that would be valuable to you, that the team would benefit from? You ask your top people, I promise you get an answer. Excuse me. The thing is, you don't need to do all the talking if you're the manager.
Yeah.
If you have someone who's great at prospecting, excuse me, You have someone who's great at prospecting, ask them to come, spend 15 minutes sharing some of their best practices for how they're prospecting. You have someone who's great at presenting, same thing, proposing, dealing with objections, whatever it is, have your people bring best practices. Have your people bring deals and opportunities where they're stuck and throw them on the table in front of everybody, whether it's by phone, video, in the room, and then have people go around and ask questions and come up with diagnosis and ways to fix where deals are stuck. If you give out the work to your people, Steve and I could list 15 great blogs for you to go read. A lot of our peers in this business have someone prepare a blog post to read and come facilitate the discussion. If you are trying to equip and energize your team, you're going to have great meetings. If you're trying to just get work done and do admin, your meetings are going to be awful.
I can't add anything to that. I think you're right on. And I remember when I first became a sales, I'm not going to add anything on to that because we're running a little low on time. And
okay.
There's some really great questions here.
Sure.
Okay, so next one that just came in, no name, but you mentioned that sales managers need to perfect their coaching skills, especially in the field. You need to coach even when you're on the phone. But can you recommend any books or resources on the subject?
Yeah, I'd like to recommend Steve Rosen's book. 52 Sales Management Tips.
We said we're not pitching anything.
No, we're not. But that book's very helpful. I'm going to give you a couple books, guys, and I'm going to exclude mine from this. Steve Rosen's book, 52 Sales Management Tips, and I have a friend, Dave Brock, out in California. He's like a mentor. I mean, he's so wise, and he's been around the block so many times. Dave self-published a book about a year and a half ago. It's called Sales Manager Survival Guide. It is high quality. It is in depth, and there's all kinds of scenarios in there. You would do well to get Dave Brock's book along with Steve's book.
And again, I don't want to plug, but I'm just going to say there's a lot of online courses. If your company's not giving you the support you need, which is at least half the companies out there, based on the surveys that we've done, I have developed an online coaching course to teach managers how to coach. It's interactive, but there's other ones out there. Our friend Jeb Blount has Sales Gravy University. So there are tons of resources out there, and I don't want to promote anyone over the other, but the fact is, if you're not getting what you need as a manager, take control of your own development.
Preach it. I love the way you say resources, you Canadian.
Yeah, baby.
Let's keep working that process.
Okay, you finally got the Canadian one in there.
I got it. Yeah.
So here's Josh. Josh, thank you for the question. Among young sales reps, how do you drive the mindset change within your sales organization to be very results focused without creating a bunch of bad corporate citizens?
That's good. Well, I think it starts with the leader. If you're a man of integrity or a woman of integrity and you lead and set the example that we do things right and we always take care of the customer and we always do what's right from the company, as goes the leader, so goes the team. There is being very results focused and all about kicking ass, taking names, and reporting goals and results is nowhere near mutually exclusive to living with high integrity and not breaking the rules. Being results focused does not imply cheating or cutting corners. So I don't want anyone earlier when I talked about I'm okay with prima donnas and I'll give some leeway to top producers. Not when it comes to integrity. There's no room for compromise there. So that's my take, Steve.
Okay, I want to throw something in here because one of the things I talk about is the difference between performance and results, and I talk about performance a lot. Okay, and not to be about semantics, but it is a mindset, and results are not always controllable, right? And the difference between performance and results is one, results happen after the fact, where performance you can manage what you do on a daily basis, the quantity and quality of effort you put in. So I think as a manager, yes, the results are important, but if you're not managing the performance that drives the results, then you're not going to, people are going to be wondering, well, why am I not getting the results? Well, let's look at what you're doing from a performance perspective because that's your controllable. So I like to differentiate the two, not from a semantical perspective, but, results are always after the fact. They're a lagging indicator of success.
That's awesome. Steve, I just want to say thank you. I think you told me that this thing's going to cut us off at the 45-minute mark.
It is.
Is that right?
It is.
So I'll say a quick thank you, and I'll let you wrap it up here. Guys, sales management is the key lever for sales culture and sales growth. Managers, it's all about you. So many companies want to just train the salespeople. It's much more important to prioritize sales leadership over sales training. You're the key to drive sales. Focus on the basics, and you will win.
Well, I want to say thank you to Mike. I mean, this has been certainly my most fun, I think my most entertaining, and my most insightful webinar that I've done this year. I've done one every month. So I want to thank you, Mike. It's been a lot of fun, and maybe we should make this an annual thing or more so, chatting sales management. But I've learned a lot. I've validated a lot of things from your comments, and it's been a real pleasure. So thank you for being my guest and putting up with all my misses. But I want to thank you. I think it was a great session. I think I love your approach to sales management, and I couldn't more strongly agree with you that the key to driving performance is your frontline sales managers, and we're there to help you be successful. So without any further ado, thank you for all your questions. We'll send out a follow-up note. I wanted to get it out to you with Mike's contact information. But Mike, why don't you tell folks where they can contact you? How about that? We still haven't been cut off yet.
Thanks, Steve. Tons of respect for you. Thank you for the honor of joining you. You can find me at my website, newsalescoach.com, and on Twitter and Instagram, Mike_Weinberg, WEINBERG, Mike_Weinberg. Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you. And again, thank everybody. I appreciate the comments and the participation. It's been energizing for me. So I wish you a great day, great sales, and thanks once again. Bye for now.